how would you describe it? Kitchen table wisdom or off-the-shelf healing, or is there a term that?
I don't know. Kitchen Table Wisdom was a book that my friend Rachel Remen wrote that I wrote the foreword to. It's a wonderful book.
Right, so I knew that there was a reason I mentioned that. Okay, so we're going to start this next section now. Um, with the book I recorded, Rachel Naomi Remen, is that right?
Mhm.
She wrote a book called Kitchen Table Wisdom, and turns out coincidentally, Dr. Ornish wrote the foreword to it. And I love the concept of that. Is
By the
that
way, it's not coincidental because she's one of my closest friends. She actually married my wife and me. We've been friends for almost 50 years.
no kidding? Wow, that's more than a close friend. Look at that small circle. So not only in that book, but the whole concept, there are things off the shelf that are as effective or more effective than drugs that can be prescribed. So are there any like go-to recommendations for that off-the-shelf kind of healing things?
Well, I mean, we can talk about individual foods, which I'm happy to do, but the idea is that, again, to radically simplify this, if you eat fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes as they come in nature, you're not getting the things that cause disease, and you're getting hundreds of thousands of others that can protect and reverse it. Things like phytochemicals, bioflavonoids, carotenoids, retinols, isoflavones, genistein, lycopene, et cetera, that have anti-cancer, anti-heart disease, and even anti-aging properties. That's where you find these foods. So you get a double benefit. And the studies, Harvard's Physician and Nurses Health Study show the same thing in hundreds of thousands of people, that when you switch from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, you're actually getting a double benefit. You're not only not increasing your risk of disease, but you're actually decreasing it. And you feel so much better, and so, I mean, blueberries, for example, I have a half pint of blueberries on my whole grain cereal or oatmeal in the morning. I have been shown to increase neurogenesis, to improve memory. And they're delicious. They make a great treat. If you want to have some late night snack and you want to reach for something, just get some preferably organic blueberries. They're just delicious. Or, most people don't even realize how good organic food can taste. Not only is it healthier for you, but it tastes so much better. This time of year, you can get white nectarines. They're like candy, and yet they're good for you. And so there's so many things that, I mean, the omega-3s that you find in walnuts, let's say, or in algae or things like that, have been shown to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's by 50%. And there are no good
Okay, so
preventing it,
So my friend, for instance, who I mentioned in the previous segment, who's not particularly health-oriented or wellness-oriented, he's a great person and all that. If I tell him to go eat algae, he's going to look at me like I'm from Mars.
Well, I mean, there's some algae-based candies you can get, that,
Okay.
you can take fish oil, but the fish get it from the algae, You can get algae-based omega-3s. You don't have to actually eat it in that way.
So let's talk about omega-3s. What foods, because omega-3s are, I know in my own life that, and my kids, I've given them organic omega-3s as they've been growing up. Mm-hmm. And now I'm holistic minded in all of this. So I slipped out to Whole Foods, and I spoke with the person in the department, and I found the best organic source of omega-3s for kids that he could take that tasted good, and didn't tell anyone. And I started to give him in vitamins in the morning. Mm-hmm. And after 10 days, the stutter, thank God, the stutter went away, and we canceled the appointments. We were ready to go into all those appointments. So is that just, is there science behind that?
Well, there's no science with omega-3s. I don't know about particularly with respect to stuttering, but for example, one study that was in the Lancet years ago showed that women who took omega-3s when they were pregnant and lactating, when they were breastfeeding, and when they gave them to their kids, that the kids' IQ was 7 points higher.
Wow.
It helps to reduce attention deficit disorder. Studies have shown that omega-3s can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease, which of course is in your brain as well, by 50%. And when you realize that there are no good drugs for either treating or effective drugs for treating or for preventing Alzheimer's, if there was a new highly effective drug that could prevent Alzheimer's in 50% of people, it'd be a multi-billion-dollar drug. But this is just omega-3s, you know. It can help it can reduce your triglycerides. It can help stabilize your heart rhythm if you have, you know, abnormal heart rhythms. So there are many benefits of doing these. My daughter, I have a 10-year-old girl who suddenly developed seizures about a year ago. It was like the scariest night of my life, because one of the worst things about being a doctor is you don't know what's really going on. I thought, oh my God, she's dying in my arms. And then we subsequently found out when we did an EEG that she's got a type of seizures that she'll outgrow in a few years. But there's no good medication for I didn't want to, the medications are fairly toxic. So I started reviewing the literature and found that there's actually good evidence on omega-3s for, you know, helping to prevent seizures. My mentor when I was at Harvard, who was chair of chief of medicine, was the first to show that it stabilizes the rhythm, not only in your heart, but also in your brain. We found that CBD and hemp extracts, especially when you have the whole hemp extracts minus the THC, the psychoactive part, there's something called the entourage effect, that all these different cannabinoids, there's almost 100 of them, work in combination, along with some other nutritional supplements that we're giving her. And knock on wood, they have really essentially prevented these seizures. So, you know, that doesn't mean that all supplements are good and all medications are bad. Of course not. These medications properly used, like surgery when properly used, can be life-saving. We've all benefited from that. But our approach is always about treating the cause. This is what I learned from Swami Satchidananda many years ago. He keeps saying, well, what's the cause? And what's the cause of that? And what's the cause of that? And there's usually a causal chain of events that leads to a problem. It's not just the magic bullet. And so the farther back in that chain of events you go, the more powerful the healing can be. And that's really been the guiding principle of all of our work for these many years.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned CBD, because it's interesting because I'm hearing anecdotal and there's science to back it up. And it's even affecting me as we build out WisdomFeed, our new hub, and we're looking for potential sponsors and partners. So I just wonder about the stigma of having a CBD company as a sponsor. Is you know, on one level, I know it's helping people's lives. My neighbor next door has been helping his kid with seizures. But is there a stigma, or there's science behind it? Or I guess that's part of the reason why it's proliferating, because it's pervasive, but it works. And I guess is there FDA approval coming for that? Or
well, I think CBD generally falls under the DSHEA guidelines of generally recognized as safe, so as a supplement, not as a drug. So whether the FDA gets involved or not, I don't know. But CBD mainly works because it has anti-inflammatory effects. Inflammation is one of the many mechanisms in this unifying theory that we put forth in our new book, and Undo It. But it's only one of many mechanisms, but it's a powerful one. And by reducing inflammation, unlike so many other drugs where the side effects of CBD are fairly minimal. But then again, like so many things, it's you know, there's a kind of a gold rush with CBD, and people are starting to make unfounded claims, or the preparations are not pure CBD. They may have some THC in there. And so if you're trying to treat a 10-year-old girl, you don't want to do that. So I make sure I went to a manufacturer. This company is called Elixinol. I have no financial relationship with. But they do gas chromatography. They actually analyze every month when they come up with a batch to make sure you can see exactly what's in it. So I think that, you know, buyer beware. On the one hand, it's wonderful that CBD and things like that are becoming more widely available. But it's important to choose a brand that you really know what you're getting.
You know, that's one of the things, you know, I've been publishing audios. We distribute, that's our core business, distributing audios and publishing them. I've been doing this on and off for many years. So we have a whole archive of recordings, and, you know, we work with legit people. And so that's part of, I think, the value of what we're trying to build out with WisdomFeed, is that it's kind of a place for vetted information. And I mean, there's snake oil in mindfulness. There's snake oil in CBD. There's snake oil in snake oil. I mean, what is
everything? And I think what people are looking for is a trusted figure that can help be their field guide through all this
field guide. I like that.
And that's why I spend so much of my time doing research, because that's the whole point of research, is to done properly, is to sort out what works and what doesn't, and for whom and under what circumstances.
Right. Okay, so we did blueberries, omega-3s, CBDs. What one or two other foods that are kind of like, or off the shelf, that makes sense?
Well, I mean, curries have something called curcumin in there, which is an Indian spice. It gives it that yellowish orange color. And it's been found to be also a powerful antioxidant and a powerful anti-inflammatory, and particularly may help to prevent Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. And since that runs in my family, that's something that I take every day. So there's more and more evidence that properly curated certain supplements can be actually very beneficial. They don't take the place of a good diet and lifestyle, but in combination with those things, they can often be additive.
And just the significance of anti-inflammatory anything. I mean, meditation could be anti-inflammatory.
Meditation is anti-inflammatory. So is exercise. So is love and support. All of these things. Again, each one of these mechanisms, eat well, move more, stress less, love more. Each one of these biological mechanisms that are part of this unifying theory, chronic inflammation, is affected by each of these four things. Oxidative stress is, changes in sympathetic nervous system stimulation, changes in the microbiome and telomeres and gene expression and angiogenesis. Each one of these mechanisms is in turn directly affected by each of these four: eat well, move more, stress less, love more. So it enables us to kind of take all of this information and simplify it radically in a way that actually is science-based, but it makes it very easy for people to incorporate into their daily life.
Right. So so I think it does come back to the basics, and is there one old world remedy that, you know, like apple cider vinegar or something that your grandmother used to do, or something that has proved out to be scientifically real? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, one of the most powerful is to give someone your full attention and love. You know, the real epidemic in our culture is not just heart disease or diabetes, it's loneliness and isolation and depression. And study after study have shown that people who are lonely and depressed are 3 to 10 times more likely to get sick and die prematurely from virtually all causes when compared to those who have a sense of love and connection and community. And I don't know anything in medicine that has that kind of impact. Even smoking doesn't. And it also affects our behavior. It goes back to what is the cause. You know, people say things like, I've got 20 friends in this pack of cigarettes, there's no one else in my life. You're going to take away my 20 friends? What are you going to give me? Or food fills the void, or fat coats my nerves and numbs the pain, or opioids numb the pain. You know, we have this opioid epidemic, or alcohol, or other drugs, or video games, or working all the time, or different strategies that people have for dealing with their loneliness and depression and isolation, because we've had this radical shift in our culture in the last 50 years with the breakdown of the social networks that used to give people a sense of love and connection and community. And so in our support groups, we're not just helping people stay on the diet, we're really creating a safe place for people to let down their emotional defenses and to talk openly and authentically about what's really going on in your life. And, you know, there's this wonderful scene in Avatar. It's like, I see you, you know, which is really from an African proverb. I see all of you. You know, when you grow up in a family 50 years ago that has 2 or 3 generations of people in a neighborhood, or an extended family you see regularly or whatever, they know you, they see you. They don't just know your Facebook profile and all these good things. They know where your dark side, where you messed up, where you got afraid, where you got imprisoned or got kicked out of school or broke that window, whatever it happens to be. And you know that they know, and they know that you know that they know. They're still there for you. There's just something very primal and powerful about being seen in that way. You know, one of the studies we quote in our new book is that the more time you spend on Facebook, the more depressed you are, because it's not an authentic intimacy. It's really like everyone's just putting their best life up. Like, oh, here I am in front of the Eiffel Tower, and here I am, doing this something wonderful. Like it looks like everybody has this perfect life but you. Whereas in an authentic intimacy, people can actually bond over their darkness in many ways. You know, like in the group, somebody might say, oh, I may look like the perfect dad, but my kid's on drugs. And somebody else might say, oh, that must be awful. My kid's on drugs too, or I'm on drugs, or I used to have a drug problem. Suddenly it doesn't change the fact that kids
Those things generally do not get posted on social media. Those are the things you hide.
And yet those are the things that when you can, when you can share them with someone and they can, connect with you on that level, it takes a lot of that stigma and shame and guilt and all those toxic emotions, and enables us then to say, okay, well, how can I address this issue without all that other stuff? And paradoxically, makes it more likely that people can actually get to a much better place.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Dallas, Texas.
And was there a community that you felt that you knew all the families and stuff? Or?
There was. I mean, I knew everybody on our block, we played touch football with each other. We were all similar ages. We could walk 2 blocks to school. We hung out a lot. So yeah, we really had that when I was growing up, and many people don't. Many people have nowhere that feels safe enough to let down their emotional defenses, and no one that they can trust enough to do that with. And we pay a price for that. And here again, I think that's part of the value of science, when we realize that the time that we spend with our friends and our family and loved ones is not a luxury that you do after you've done all the important stuff, that it is the important stuff. Then we can reprioritize our time and spend more time with our friends and family without feeling like, we should be doing something, quote, more important.
Now that's interesting. Towards wrapping up, so I think I mentioned earlier that I just finished this novel that I adapted from a screenplay that I originally wrote. So I grew up same times as you, but I grew up in Brighton Beach or Coney Island. You ever been to Coney Island at all? Or?
Sure.
Sure. So we grew up there, and we played stickball, and we played hopscotch, and we played basketball, and we played Johnny on the Pony, and none of those games you needed to log into your Xbox, and and you got to. What's that?
It didn't have to pay anybody.
Exactly. So I started writing the story 15 years ago because I wanted my kids to know what it was like in the old days. And my dad owned the neighborhood record store, so Neil Diamond and Neil Sedaka were in the neighborhood. And so I just finished it's called The Sneaker Tree, and hope to there was interest in making a movie of it. Anyway, but it takes place in the summer of '69, and auspiciously, coincidentally,
Summer of Love.
I think the Summer of Love was the summer before that.
That's right. Okay.
And then this was '69 with the Moonwalk, Woodstock, and the Miracle Mets for the New Yorkers, and coincidentally today is the 50th anniversary of the start of Woodstock. So what do you know about how Satchidananda opened up Woodstock, or is there a story behind that? Or?
Well, he was brought to this country by Peter Max, the artist, and Conrad Rooks, a filmmaker, in 1966. And he was asked to open Woodstock. They got stuck in a massive traffic jam on the way there, so they helicoptered him in. If you've seen the movie Woodstock, you'll see him. He looks kind of like the archetypal Swami with a long white beard and saffron robe and so on. And he became my spiritual teacher for over 40 years until he died about 10 years ago. We talked all the time. And in many respects, the work that I'm doing is just a logical outgrowth of what I learned from him. And he was always talking about, truth is one, paths are many, and that the ultimate healing comes from being able to have a double vision, that on one level you see we're all separate, you're you and I'm me. But on another level, we're part of something larger that connects us all, whatever name you give to that. And different religions give it different names, but even to give it a name is to limit what's essentially a limitless experience. It's a transcendent experience. And what I learned from it, it's kind of like he'd use the example of an old style movie projector and film, that the light goes through the projector and then the film has a whole cast of characters and dramas on the screen. But if you know that there's the light behind it as well, then you can enjoy the drama without getting too caught up in it. And so much suffering really comes from thinking that we're separate and only separate, the other. Once you see somebody as separate and only separate, they're different, they're the other, then you can do bad things to them. And we're seeing that all too often now in the political arena with the rise of, hate crimes and gun shootings and white supremacy and those Mexican rapists, those Muslim terrorists. I mean, it's really scary stuff that's going on now. But it all comes down to that sense of separateness. And to me, that anything that brings people together is healing. Even the word healing comes from the root to make whole, and yoga is from the Sanskrit to yoke, to unite, union. These are really old ideas that we're rediscovering. And so the Swami Satchidananda, built a temple on the James River in Virginia, near Buckingham County, called the Lotus Temple. And there's a light that comes up, and then a beam splitter illuminates all of the different religions. Basically, truth is one, paths are many. That we can enjoy the diversity. We can enjoy having this conversation now, but we can really enjoy it if we don't get stuck in the fact that we also, in addition to being separate, that there's a unity behind that. And so for me, the work that I do is really part of what I call a conspiracy of love, that when people are hurting, there's an openness and a receptivity to change that you don't often see. And I wasn't trained to do that as a doctor, but we're trying to create this new paradigm where people could use the experience of suffering as a catalyst and as a doorway for really transforming their lives in ways that I can't tell you how many people have said things to me like, having a heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to me, or being diagnosed with prostate cancer was a good thing, or breast cancer, or whatever. And the first time I heard that, I went like, what are you, nuts? And they'd say, no, that's what it took to get my attention to begin making these changes that have transformed my life to make it so much more joyful and peaceful and meaningful that I probably never would have gotten interested in that otherwise. And so that's why it gets me out of bed every day and why I love doing this work. It's really an opportunity for healing at its deepest levels.
Very exciting. And then the, what's that called? A yantra in the middle?
Uh-huh.
So that was from Satchidananda's altar back in the day, and Peter Max drew that. So
no, actually Satchidananda drew that.
What? Peter said he did.
Well, okay.
Oh, but tell me, really.
My understanding is that he drew it himself. Peter advised him on that. But the nice thing about those yantras is that they're not static. If you meditate on them, they start to pulse. There's an energy with them. And it's really a representation of in the middle, you have the unity, like the Big Bang Theory, if you will. And then over time, things become progressively more differentiated. And so it's again, an opportunity to see the unity and the diversity and to realize that both are important.
Excellent. That was excellent. So another good session, and had a great conversation with Dr. Dean Ornish.
Thank you so much.
And his website is ornish.com, ORNISH.com, if you want more info. And my new book is The Sneaker Tree, which will be live on Amazon today. So
Good.
That's exciting.
Congratulations. And our new book that my wife and I wrote is called Undo It. So I hope it's useful.
Right, undo it, absolutely. And there are other sessions in our podcast that go deeper into that, into the book. And so thanks very much. And I guess that's it for now.
It's great to be back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I think that was excellent.
Cool. Well, thank you again. You're a good interviewer. And congratulations on your new book and getting that. I know how hard that can be, especially after 15 years. So well done.
It's, on top of keeping everything else going, but my kids get back from camp on Monday, and I gave them, it's the 50th anniversary of all this. So, and there's actually interest. One of the authors created MacGyver that I published in audiobooks, and he's interested in making it like the Amazing Miss Maisel.
Well, I hope. Well, good luck to you, Mazel Tov.
Good luck, right? Not yet, but we'll take the good luck. And the other thing is, I'd like to keep you posted as we make progress with WisdomFeed. We're looking for content and legit, not only content, audio, video, and then I think you said that at the end of the year, maybe the rights to some of your audios open up or something like that. Did I get that right? Or
not the audios, but some other things. But yeah, so let's stay in touch. Let me know after the first of the year, and we'll pick it up from there.
Sounds great.
Good to talk to you. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks so much.